The Serpent's Price. Kofi had always known hardship. His village, nestled in the heart of the African bush, had been his home for as long as he could remember. The skies above were often gray and unforgiving, the rains sparse, and the crops rarely grew tall enough to feed even the smallest family. His life, like many others in the village, was defined by scarcity of food, of wealth, of opportunity. Each day, Kofi would wake before dawn, his body aching from the previous day's labor. He worked the land as best as he could, but it never seemed enough. The land was poor, and so was he. His hut was made of simple mud walls, and the thatched roof leaked whenever the rain did fall, drenching his belongings and leaving him cold. At times, when the winds howled through the trees, Kofi would sit by his small fire and dream of a different life, one where wealth flowed like the rivers, where his fields were abundant, where his family had all they needed, and where he could finally sleep at night without the worry of another empty day ahead. But dreams were all he had, and those were fading fast. It was on one of those quiet nights as Kofi stared into the fire that he saw the man. He wasn't sure when he had arrived, but there, standing at the edge of his small firelight, was an old man. His skin was darkened with age, his clothes ragged but strangely regal in their own way. His eyes were sharp, penetrating, and his very presence made the air around Kofi grow heavy. The man looked to be a traveler, someone who had seen much of the world, someone who might hold secrets that could change Kofi's life forever. "I see the weight of the world upon you, young man," the traveler said, his voice soft, like a whisper carried by the wind. "And I see you are hungry, hungry for more." Kofi, startled by the stranger's sudden appearance, nodded slowly. "I am, old man. I have worked this land for years, and still it yields little. My family suffers, and I have nothing to offer them but my labor. What is it that you want?" The old man smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "I do not seek your labor, Kofi. I seek only to help you. I am an Inyanga, a healer of the spirits. I have knowledge that can make you rich beyond your wildest dreams, but it comes with a price." Kofi's heart skipped a beat. Rich beyond his wildest dreams. He had heard rumors of such things, of people who had made pacts with spirits, of wealth granted in exchange for sacrifices. "Tell me more," Kofi said, his voice hoarse with hope. "What must I do?" The Inyanga leaned closer, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "There is a serpent, a sacred creature that holds the power to change your life. If you are willing to pay the price, it will grant you wealth, health, and power like none have ever seen." Kofi felt a shiver run through him. A serpent? He had heard of such things. Dark spirits that required blood, that demanded sacrifices. But the lure of wealth was too great. "What is the price?" The Inyanga's smile faded and his eyes became solemn. "The price is simple, but it is not one to be taken lightly. You must follow the rules, Kofi. The serpent will grant you wealth, but only if you feed it a piece of your own blood once a month. You must keep it hidden, never tell anyone of its existence, and never seek more than what is given to you. If you break the agreement, there will be consequences, dark and unforgiving." Kofi's mind raced. A piece of blood once a month? He could do that. He could manage it. And in exchange, he would have the wealth to buy whatever he wanted, to finally escape the cycle of poverty. "I accept," Kofi said, his voice firm, his heart racing with anticipation. The Inyanga nodded, and without another word, he handed Kofi a small coiled snake. Its scales glimmered in the dim light of the fire, and its eyes shone a deep, unnatural red. It was beautiful, in a way that made Kofi uneasy, but his desire for a better life overpowered any fear he might have had. In the days that followed, Kofi kept the serpent hidden as instructed. He kept it in a small wooden box beneath his bed, only feeding it a drop of his own blood once a month, as the Inyanga had instructed. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The days passed and Kofi continued his work as he always had, plowing the fields, tending to the animals, and hoping for a sign that the serpent's power was real. And then one morning, the miracle happened. As Kofi walked to his fields, he noticed something strange. The soil beneath his feet was rich and fertile, a stark contrast to the dry, cracked earth he had been used to. His crops began to grow taller, their leaves greener, their fruits more abundant than ever before. By the end of the week, he had enough food to feed his family for an entire year. As the seasons passed, Kofi's life changed dramatically. The serpent had granted him what the Inyanga had promised. His fields flourished, and he was able to sell his crops at the market, making enough money to buy livestock, build a sturdy home, and even send his children to school. His wealth grew steadily, and soon Kofi became one of the richest men in the village. People came to him for advice, to borrow money, to learn from his success. But with wealth came something else: power. Kofi began to desire more. He wanted not just riches, but influence. He wanted to be respected, feared. The serpent had given him everything he asked for, but Kofi's hunger for more began to grow insatiable. One night alone in his home, Kofi stared at the serpent curled in its box. "Give me more," he whispered. "Make me the richest man in the world. Make me untouchable. I have followed your rules. I deserve more." The serpent's eyes glowed red in the dim light. It hissed softly, a sound that seemed to vibrate through Kofi's very soul. And then, the serpent spoke in a voice that seemed to echo in Kofi's mind. "More? You desire more, Kofi?" Kofi nodded eagerly. "Yes, I want more. I want to be the wealthiest man on the planet." The serpent's eyes narrowed, its body twitching with a strange energy. "Then more you shall have," it said. "But remember, there are always consequences for greed." The following day, Kofi awoke to find that his wealth had grown exponentially. His house was no longer just a sturdy building. It was a mansion, a sprawling estate that rivaled those of kings. His livestock multiplied, and his fields seemed to stretch endlessly, filled with crops that grew at an impossible rate. But even as his wealth increased, a sense of unease settled over him. The more he gained, the more restless he became. He could no longer sleep at night, as his mind raced with thoughts of even more power, more riches. His life, once so full of promise, had turned into a prison. The wealth that had once brought him joy now felt like a heavy burden. Soon he began to notice something else. His health began to decline. He was always tired, always drained, as though something vital was being taken from him. His once vibrant eyes became dull, his skin pale and thin. His family noticed, but when they asked him what was wrong, Kofi could only offer vague excuses. And then, one night, the serpent spoke again. "You have broken the agreement, Kofi," it hissed. "You asked for more, and now you must pay the price." Kofi's heart sank. "What do you mean? I followed the rules. I've given you what you asked for." The serpent's eyes glowed brighter, and Kofi felt a cold chill run down his spine. "You have broken the one rule," it said. "You sought more than what was promised, and now you must suffer the consequences." The following days were filled with dread. Kofi's wealth began to slip through his fingers. The fields that had once flourished with crops withered and died. The animals he had once cherished grew sick and died one by one. His home, once magnificent, began to crumble, its walls cracking, its foundations shifting. People who had once admired him now avoided him, whispering about the strange, dark change that had come over him. Kofi's wealth had turned to dust, and with it, his health continued to worsen. His body grew frail, his bones aching as though the very life was being drained from him. Desperate, Kofi sought out the Inyanga, but when he arrived at the old man's hut, he found nothing but an empty, abandoned home. The Inyanga was gone, leaving no trace of where he had gone or why. Kofi returned home, where the serpent still lay in its box. Its eyes glowed brighter than ever before, and as he gazed into them, he realized the truth. The serpent had never been a gift. It had always been a trap, a bargain with dark forces that he could never escape. And now the price had come due. Days turned into weeks, and Kofi's life continued to unravel. His once great fortune was gone, replaced by an endless darkness that seemed to suffocate him. He could no longer escape the consequences of his greed. The serpent's power had claimed everything: his wealth, his health, and his very soul. One final night, as Kofi lay in his bed, the serpent slithered from its box and coiled around his body. Its cold, smooth scales pressed against his skin, and he could feel its presence growing stronger, as though it were feeding on his very essence. With a final, mournful hiss, the serpent whispered, "You sought more, Kofi. Now you have everything you wanted. And as the serpent's grip tightened, Kofi's world went dark. His life, once full of promise, was now a warning to those who would seek to gain everything without understanding the cost.